When we run our governments and their university professors here, when they teach political science, oh, what science do they teach? They teach the ideas of somebody from the United States. They talk about Max Weber. They talk about Adam Smith. They talk about John Austin. They talk about H.A. Elart. They don't talk about Kabarega. They don't talk about Mutesa. They don't talk about Shaka the Amazulu. They don't talk about us because we are totally dominated.
This is the journey to one Africa.
When in 1914 the European tribes were fighting amongst themselves, they called it the World War. When they fight themselves, they call it World War. From where they sit, what they do is the world. When they fought again between 1939 and 1945, they did not call it tribal war, they call it world war. And we were inducted into those wars. They came to us and they told us that our cultures were not good, so that even today, as I speak to you, instead of addressing you in Kiswahili or Kinyoro or Luganda, they have captured our tongues that I am now speaking to you in a foreign tongue. I look forward to the day when in an assembly such as this I'll address you in the Kiswahili language. I look forward to that day. I look forward to the day when we shall have totally liberated ourselves, that we will be able to appreciate that indeed when we talk about development, we talk about the totality of culture. In Kiswahili they say, mwachamila ni mtumwa. He or she who abandons his or her culture is a slave. And there is a sense in which we remain enslaved. How do we remain enslaved? Just look at your names, including my very own. Look at it. Who is this individual that is called Patrick, for whom I am named? Who is he? Why is it that on the day that I was baptized, they could not allow me to use my local name? Why? Why is it that when we are referring to ourselves, we refer to ourselves as Anglophone, as Francophone, as Lusophone? And right now we are even always in the business of referring to ourselves as other phones. Soon we will be Sinophone. This is what we are doing to ourselves on a daily basis in the name of development. When we run our governments and their university professors here, when they teach political science, oh, what science do they teach? They teach the ideas of somebody from the United States. They talk about Max Weber. They talk about Adam Smith. They talk about John Austin. They talk about H.A. Elart. They don't talk about Kabarega. They don't talk about Mutesa. They don't talk about Shaka the Amazulu. They don't talk about us because we are totally dominated. So that even the universities that we run, the law that we teach, the political science that we teach, the history that we teach, the geography that we teach is so Eurocentric that on this day when we remember Omuka Makabarega, we must also exercise the spirit of slavery, mental slavery, that we may welcome a new spirit of freedom. Because if we don't, we will be dominated throughout the ages. You know, as I talk about development now, I think about this continent that has known slavery, the Omukama himself, was taken away from the comfort of his kingdom and spirited to Seychelles. He stayed there for over 2 decades. When they had neutered the society, then they allowed him to come back. He did not get home. He died on his way. But this country for a long time did not even recognize him until later in the day. But we still recognize Prince Charles with a name in the middle of Kampala. I look forward to the day when such names shall no longer exist in the streets of Kampala. When I think about this continent, and I think about how we were colonized, and I think about how we regained our independence, and no sooner had we regained our independence than we adopted the very same things that we inherited from the white colonizers. So that if you go to the Ugandan parliament, the Kenyan parliament, the Ghanaian parliament, the Zimbabwean parliament, the Nigerian parliament, as the great African-American John Hendrick said, they are mimicry of what the colonizers left for us. And he says, and I agree, we will never succeed on the basis of that kind of organization. We were told, and we are still told, that in order to run a government, in order to run a judiciary, you must run it in the manner that the British taught us to do, complete with the manner in which they dressed. In order to run a parliament, we must run a parliament like they did, and our speaker must still wear some woolen white thing, which people stopped wearing many years ago, but we still wear. And even when we run our affairs, we must do it in the manner that they did. We are mimicking them. And when we think we have developed, indeed we are not. That is what colonization did to us. So today, when we are gathered here to remember Omukama Kabarega, we are asking ourselves, is there not something in our tradition that we could use to change the continent of Africa? And why is that argument legitimate and necessary? It is legitimate and necessary because when Ghana became the first country to regain her independence, the first sub-Saharan country to regain her independence, always be very careful, because the Sudanese will tell you that they regained their independence in 1956 and Ghana in 1957, but I always remind them that the real independence in Africa was with Ghana in 1957. And I can still remember those powerful words of Ghana's Kwame Nkrumah on 6th of March 1957, say that the independence of Ghana meant nothing if the rest of Africa was not free. But even as he spoke those words, Kwame Nkrumah was quite clear. He was clear that flag independence, the mere fact that we have the Ugandan flag, or the Kenyan flag, or the Ugandan national anthem, or the Kenyan national anthem, or the Ghanaian national anthem, or the Nigerian national anthem, was not sufficient. That there was something else. And he reminded us in 1965 that Africa was getting into the most dangerous stage, the stage where the former colonizers would become more deadly through the neo-colonial project. No sooner had he written his book than they overthrew him. No sooner had he written his book than they started destroying what we had inherited from them. So those of you who are students of history will remember the 1960s. You'll remember in 1961, the Congolese thought that they had regained independence under Patrice Emery Lumumba. They killed him after 9 months. The Togolese thought that they had regained independence under Sylvanus Olympio. They killed him in 1963. The Ghanaians thought that they had regained independence in 1957. They overthrew Nkrumah in 1966. They thought in Nigeria that they had regained independence with Nnamdi Azikiwe and Abubakar Tafawa Balewa. They overthrew him in 1967. The Malians thought that they had regained independence through Modibo Keita. They overthrew him in 1968. The Algerians thought they did so through Ahmed Ben Bella. They overthrew him in 1968. Africa, as I speak now, and I want you to cast your eyes across the continent of Africa and see the crisis of governance, and therefore begging the question, is there a place for African culture and governance? Tell me whether there is peace in the Democratic Republic of Congo. Tell me whether there is peace in Sudan. Tell me whether there is peace in northern Mali. Tell me whether there is peace in Somalia. Tell me whether there is peace in Cameroon. Tell me whether the Europeans are not telling us what to do. Tell me whether they do not send their agents across every country. Tell me whether the IMF and the World Bank are not trying to interfere in our affairs. Tell me whether they are not telling us who a man is and who a woman is. Tell me whether they are not telling us what to wear. Tell me, what are they not telling us? They are telling us that if we don't have culture, they'll give us their culture. Tell me. This is the state in which we find ourselves.